Hello everyone and welcome back to the channel. Today we're going to be talking about Monkey Man. I'm going to keep this one pretty brief because the embargo has been lifted for this film for weeks now because it screened at South by Southwest. So let's dive right into this. It's an action slash revenge thriller, kind of like John Wick. I know that's a really obvious comparison to make, but quite frankly it just makes sense to compare it to John Wick because it kind of revitalized the revenge thriller genre. Dev Patel directed this, he also stars in it. It's clearly kind of a passion project for him, and it even earned him a standing ovation at the film festival. So I was excited for it, and the fact that people were saying it's essentially like John Wick, a revenge thriller, but with some new and interesting things that we maybe haven't seen before, that drew me in. But I'm going to tell you right now, this is not much different from John Wick, or Atomic Blonde, or Nobody, or the 100 other films that have inhabited this genre since John Wick came out in 2014. But that's not a bad thing. Familiarity can be a good thing if it's still well executed. And the storyline here is something we've seen many times before. We start out with this broken man, this character that we don't know too much about, and over the course of the film we learn about his past, which happens to be quite tragic. And we learn more about the people that did these atrocious things to him, and thus he winds up on this revenge spree that culminates in a third act that is very bloody and brutal with lots of satisfying kills. First and foremost, I gotta praise Dev Patel for his commitment to this. I did read that he broke a bunch of bones while filming the fight scenes. I really respect the commitment, even if I don't think the film itself is perfect. You see his passion come through on the screen for sure, not just in his performance, but also the direction, the level of intensity that comes from both him as an actor and as a filmmaker. I'm really curious to see where he goes from here because this is someone who shows a lot of potential. And the film is very quiet and mysterious, at least initially. This main character is a street-level fighter, essentially. He lets himself get beat to a pulp to make a few bucks, and that's how he survives until he discovers an opportunity to infiltrate this group of people that wronged him in the past, and that kind of kickstarts the whole story. And as the movie goes on, we also get flashbacks that relate to this main character and his mother, and some very obvious and predictable things are eventually unveiled. But it still worked for me. It was sufficient enough to get me invested in this character when, in reality, you're fine with that, because all you want to see is you want to see him go after these bad guys and fuck them up. The action sequences in Monkey Man are quite interesting because I find them to be very inconsistent. Some of them are very well shot. You know, it doesn't look like there's many cuts. It's not too shaky. The distance between the camera and the performers is just right. Lots of knives, frying pans, and inventive weapons being used. It's a lot of fun to watch. But then there are other sequences where I think the camera was a little too jerky to the point that you can't really see what's happening so well. Maybe a few too many close-up shots. But for the most part, I like the style of the action sequences. There are even a couple where the camera will do a sudden 180 pan to the other side of the room and then back. The choreography definitely isn't perfect. There are moments where you could absolutely pause it and see a bad guy, red shirt, whiffing just to whiff because, well, plot armor. I do have some other nitpicks regarding the action sequences. For one thing, the bad guys only have guns when it's convenient to the plot. If our protagonist is going up against just one or two guys, sure, they'll pull out their sidearms and he'll have to fight around that. But there'll be scenes where there's like a dozen dudes rushing him, and of course they don't have guns because, well, he'd be kind of fucked. Another thing that bugged me, and people will definitely say this is a nitpick, but when he's in this underground fighting ring, he gets the absolute shit beaten out of him, and then the next scene we'll see him walking around with no bruises or visible injuries to his face. I appreciate attention to detail, and they could have at least made it look like he actually got the shit beaten out of him, which he just did like 5 minutes ago, and I don't think they were trying to show any sort of time skip. But quite frankly, my biggest problem with this movie is the pacing. The first act is kind of slow, but it's slow for a reason. It's slow because it needs to get us introduced to this character and the other characters that he's going to be surrounded by for the rest of the movie. But then we get some cool action sequences, and then the pacing just suddenly hits a halt. He falls into a river and gets saved by this group of people who live in a temple. And then we get like this 30-minute stretch where he's connecting to himself spiritually. We even get a corny montage of him beating a punching bag, and this lasts for like 10 minutes. And I'm just sitting here thinking, this is a 2-hour movie. It easily could have been like an hour and 40 minutes, but man, the third act goes hard. Lots of awesome kills, great choreography, satisfying, crowd-pleasing moments that had other people cheering around me. Although it definitely goes for a grittier tone, there were moments that reminded me of Kill Bill, which was kind of cool, you know, hyper-violent, but not taking itself too seriously to the point that it detracts from your enjoyment. So I'm giving Monkey Man a comfortable 3.5 out of 5. It's definitely not the best in this genre or anything. It doesn't have a leg up on John Wick Chapter 4. And I do think it's a little overhyped. People have really been buzzing about this after its debut at South by Southwest, and I don't think you should go into this expecting a masterpiece, because I don't think it's a masterpiece, but it is solid, and I'm excited to see where Dev Patel goes after this in terms of what he can do behind the camera. So as always, guys, be sure to let me know in the comments what you think of Monkey Man, and while you're at it, hit that like button and subscribe if you want to see more content like this, and I'll catch you guys in the next one. See you later.